Welcome to Suffolk Matters, where all of Suffolk County meets the men and women of Suffolk AME. News, opinions, and insights you won't hear anywhere else. Here's your host, the president of New York's largest independent union, Suffolk AME's Dan Levler.
Welcome to another edition of Suffolk Matters on Walk 97.5 and 94.3 The Shark, where Suffolk County meets the men and women of Suffolk AME. News and views you can't hear anywhere else.
So my guest this morning is Ryan Stanton. He's the executive director of the Long Island Federation of Labor. Congratulations, Ryan, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you for the congratulations, and thanks for having me.
Happy to have you here. And, you know, just for our listeners, I guess for context, for those that don't know, what is Long Island Federation of Labor, and what is it that you do for them?
So we are, almost everybody, if not everybody on Long Island, is familiar with what a union is. Unions have members, right, and ultimately are part of this larger organization. Those organizations are my members. Those are affiliates. So affiliates of the Long Island Federation of Labor represent 250,000 union members across Nassau and Suffolk County. And we're there to support working people on Long Island, you know, whether you're a union member or not. And ultimately, my day job is to figure out the best way to support those people.
Sure. And, you know, I've been to a number of things when you guys put stuff together. One of the things I think you guys do best is really look at what's needed legislatively and then sitting down and having conversations with folks to move initiatives along in the public forum in a way that, as I think you accurately said, advances working people, not just union members, but working people in general. So, you know, how has that changed from what you previously did, which, you know, again, you were involved in this capacity, but now you have this new title, so...
Yeah, so ultimately the mission remains the same, and the title is different, and day-to-day is different, whether it was in my previous role as the political director or the role I'm privileged enough to sit in now as the executive director. But in the here and now, you know, we're really focused on the establishment of Suffolk County Wastewater Management District, also known as the Suffolk County Water Quality Restoration Act. So what's different is that I think I'm now getting to choose, based on affiliate feedback, the allocation of my time and where I think we can best support our affiliates and improve the region as a whole. Fortunately, it's not too different because my predecessor, you know, I joke, nobody wants to play for the Chicago Bulls after Michael Jordan retires.
Right.
I feel like I'm playing for the Chicago Bulls right now, but I'll do my best.
That is, you know, it's aptly said. Roger is well respected and loved, and you know, really gave his all when he was executive director, and you know, continues to do so. But big shoes to fill for sure.
Yeah, I won't try to fill them, but I will. I'll do my best. That's all I can do.
Awesome. So you mentioned the Suffolk County Water Quality Restoration Act, and I guess it's probably important just to start out with, you know, what is that? That
is hopefully what advances Suffolk County to the time of ancient Rome, right? Ancient Rome managed to figure out sewers. We haven't gotten there yet, but what I believe the Suffolk County Water Quality Restoration Act will do, and the exact language of it, you know, is still to be sorted out, but it gives the voters an opportunity to say we'd like sewers and IA systems, which is just on-site septic systems that treat our effluent, to have a path forward to invest in that, to improve our water quality in the region. Right now, you know, we're very fortunate we have the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment Act.
Yes.
That passed at the federal level. You know, President Biden signed it, and that's going to put a lot of people to work, and that's good. That's great. We support that. We're excited about it. But very quickly, unfortunately, we're going to see those dollars spent.
Yes.
Projects will be supported with those dollars, but then what do we do? And there's really nothing in place for the voters to say how they would like for us to continue the good work of building out sewer infrastructure. And the Suffolk County Water Quality Restoration Act gives voters a chance to vote on that in November and figure out how we do that going forward.
Sure. And listen, you know, Long Island, sole source aquifer, right? So we have to protect our ability to draw and distribute potable water, right? Things that you can use to cook and clean and whatever else. And we have to recharge that aquifer as well. We don't want to, just discharge everything out into the bay, or further south than that even. So having a plan in place to start developing sewers for everybody. There's areas in Suffolk County that have sewers. There's areas in Nassau County that have sewers, but a great majority of Suffolk County does not have sewers, and I think a lot of people really want them. So the question really comes down to, how through an act of government and also through the act of the voters, do we figure out a way to finance a system that starts putting all of these systems in place? And I want to thank you for involving AME in those discussions. This is something that I care very much about, and my previous history coming out of public works and specifically dealing with sewers. So something I care a lot about.
You know a thing or two about this, right?
Yeah, a little bit here and there, right? But it's not a glamorous thing that people want to talk about, but it really is a quality of life issue. And I think if people gave it a moment and said, okay, well, listen, if I got to throw 20 cents a day towards, getting sewers for everybody, maybe I would do that. Now, I'm just making up numbers. I don't,
Yeah.
We're not at that point yet, but I believe people see the worth in having these systems in place, and so giving them the opportunity to talk about that and understand. But are there other reasons you can think of that sewers are so important for our region?
Yeah, I can definitely answer that question, and I will. But I want to come back to something you just suggested, and I would say there's evidence to support the conclusion you've drawn. Right? Do people in Suffolk County want sewers? And we think the answer is yes. We don't have to look too far in the past to know the answer is yes.
Right.
There was a referendum conducted in a number of communities, and in just the last several months, we were fortunate to break ground on the Carls River and Forge River projects.
Yep.
To bring sewers to communities that have never had them. So, you and I aren't just shooting from the hip, speaking off the cuff. We know when given the opportunity, if voters have a chance to invest in their community to improve water quality here in Suffolk County, they want to do it. So the Suffolk County Water Quality Restoration Act is just going to give the rest of the county an opportunity to pursue that and figure out, do we want to implement a plan to achieve that? But your question was, is there other reasons that people might want sewers? And, I think so. I live in Sayville, a community that is not sewered. I know very well that there are restaurants there that would love to be able to have a dishwasher so that they might be able to serve the wonderful, delicious entrees at any one of the establishments in town on actual plateware instead of, in some instances, being forced to utilize paper plates.
Sure.
And I'm sure nobody wants paper and plastic and all that stuff for establishments down on the bay. Ending up in the bay, it would be a guarantee that that's not going to happen if we're using actual silverware that's going back to the dishwasher. Right. But right now, health code doesn't allow for the expansion or the ability to do that because there's nowhere for the wastewater to go.
And listen, it's wasteful, right? When you're using these single-use utensils, single-use, plates, lack of a better term. You use them once, you throw them away. That ends up in a landfill somewhere, gets burnt, whatever else. It's kind of more. When you talk about the economics of sewers, these are things that people don't necessarily think of. They'll think about the guy in the machine, maybe digging, and the guy's putting the pipe together and backfilling and getting the road. They'll see that. But they may not necessarily recognize what it does for the economy to be able to have restaurants do things like wash dishes, I
mean, just think about the Village of Babylon, Village of Lindenhurst. All these places are sewered, right? Wonderful downtowns. I'm sure there's communities throughout Suffolk County that would love to have businesses come in, invest in their community, and give them a walkable downtown. I'm a millennial. Some millennials might take that as a derogatory term, right? We're always thrown into. But the reality is we hear over and over and over again from millennials, we want walkable downtowns, we want vibrant communities, we want a sense of place, right? We want to be with one another. And businesses know that and would be, I'm sure, willing to invest in communities we don't have the infrastructure in place to support them. So they don't even have the ability to do that. And so it's not just where does wastewater go, it's also an economic investment in our communities. And again, I think if people were given the chance, they would definitely say we want that.
Sure. And, so there are some existing sewer districts, we talked about that already, where these programs are in place already and they have the ability to treat waste. But, here in Suffolk County, on some level, everybody contributes a little bit towards those sewer systems, not just the people in the district, everybody. There are certain programs put in place by the state, put in place by the county, that bring in revenue to keep those things going. And I think it's a great idea for the taxpayers to be able to contribute a little bit of their tax dollars towards their sewer system and not just the areas that have sewer systems.
Yeah, we should all share in the economic opportunity. And I know you and I, and I'm sure many others would agree on that. We're investing in programs, and I'm sure that there's folks at the county that can speak to exactly how those programs are executed and administered better than I can. But as you point out, we're doing it now. And unfortunately, not everybody's benefiting from it. So our argument for this is, let the voters decide that, they would like to be involved in this and have this in their community.
Sure. And, I guess it's worth discussing. Is there a system like this that exists already? I mean, are we inventing something brand new here, or?
No. Maryland pursued the Maryland Bay Restoration Fund. It's pretty straightforward, and from what I understand, reasonably successful, if not very successful. I don't live in Maryland, so I won't purport to speak for them, but what we do know is that water quality improved and has continued to improve and will improve over time. I don't know the communities there, so I won't speak to the economic development component in those communities.
Right.
But bringing it back home, we know, again, places like the Village of Babylon, Village of Lindenhurst, where we have sewer infrastructure. Mm-hmm. The economic circumstances have been beneficial to the community as a whole.
Sure. And, I don't know where, but I remember reading that it was somewhere in the area of like $5 that the program, the out-of-state program costs. And again, in Maryland, cost of living is a bunch lower. So $5 in Maryland versus, say, $5 here on Long Island, it's going to go, a little further in Maryland than it does here. But the fact of the matter is, an existing program that works, that gives everybody a model, to go on. Now, do you find, I know I've had some conversations, and I know you've had some conversations, but do you feel like there's some support on the state level, on the local level, as it comes down to, the elected officials that are ultimately going to decide whether or not, this thing reads the right way, whether or not it goes out to the voters to decide on and everything? Is there any consensus out in the world on this?
So I hope so. We've had conversations with members of our state Senate delegation and members of our Assembly delegation, and we've made clear to them this is a priority for working people. We're counting on you to give them a choice and a say in the matter. Get it through the state legislative process. All it is authorizing legislation, and let the voters decide. Give them a chance to participate in government and civics in their community. Don't stand in the way of that. And so we'll know for sure, right? If there's consensus come April 1, this will either be in the budget or it won't. But we've made our voice clear. I know you guys have been terrific partners, battling water quality along the way over the years. And, we're hopeful that folks will listen to sense and reason when it comes to getting this done.
I always find that no matter what the initiative is, whether it's a really great idea or it's something kind of neutral or whatever, there's always like forces that are in favor and forces that aren't. And sometimes when the forces that aren't in favor of a particular initiative, man, they can make something great sound super horrible. And, in this case, it is my hope that that's not what ends up happening here, because this really is, I think, a very good thing for our region. I think it's a very good thing for working people. I think it's all people in Suffolk County, whether you live here, you're visiting, you're just working and going somewhere else, whatever.
I mean, you just touched on it, right? People come here to visit, and why do they come here to visit? We have some of the best beaches in the country, in the world, and why are we going to continue to pollute those beaches, ruin our water quality? So for anyone that would be opposed to this, I would just hope that they'd be interested in a good faith discussion about what it really means instead of just trying to poison the well, because we know with the politics of today, it's very easy to get people riled up and ruin something with tremendous potential for the region. Really with a, just an off-the-cuff comment or a stroke of the pen here or there with a letter to the editor.
Right.
It's really easy to sabotage something. It's hard to get good work done. And we're committed to getting good work done here. I hope the leaders in the region are as well.
My guest this morning is Ryan Stanton. He is the executive director of Long Island Federation of Labor. And Ryan, let's talk about something. I got to tell you, I love this, but I want to talk about Starbucks. There's a couple of things that happen upstate and now across the country, and it really, to me, it speaks to the heart of the labor movement. Why the labor movement existed in the first place, right? And I read something the other day, and they said, there was a point in time where you couldn't question the divine right of kings. And now here we are in the future, and we got past that in life and whatever else. And I see this Starbucks movement as people saying, what's another thing that I say, like I'm using little sound bites here, but if people say, when inflation hits, it changes everything but minimum wage, right? Why is that? Why is that? So seeing these groups of people coming together and really just understanding their value and standing together and saying, hey, without us, work doesn't get done. So, but why don't you get everybody up to speed on Starbucks, what's going on?
Yeah, so I think the pandemic, as tough as it's been on a lot of people, it's been really tough on workers, right? And workers were tasked with making sure the world goes round. And one of the things that we all know makes the world go round is a good cup of coffee.
Yep.
Right, so Starbucks workers have finally, as I think you used the phrase just a moment ago, we could not question the divine right of kings, and I think CEOs in America might have, for a period of time in our recent history, felt like they were empowered with the divine right of kings, and Starbucks baristas have said enough is enough, and workers in Buffalo made history organizing, campaigning for an election and a voice in their workplace, and they won. As of recording, just this week, you had the number of Starbucks in this country that were unionized grow by 100%, right? So there were 3 elections yesterday,
Yes.
and 3 that were successful. And what we're seeing in the Starbucks campaign is that despite the obstacles, despite the millions and millions of dollars that are spent to quell the voice of workers in the workplace, that when they have an opportunity to speak up and insist that they have a voice in the workplace, that they want it, right? Given the choice, put to a vote, they have proven very successful in this particular campaign. And so store by store, we've seen well over 100 now petition for a union election, 3 of which are here on Long Island thus far, and those are only the stores that have gone public. So just to be explicit about it, we have a store in Great Neck was the first to go public, a store in Massapequa, and a store in Farmingville. And Workers United is the local union that is working with those workers that they had. The workers in those stores have asked to help them through this process and hopefully afford them representation going forward.
Yeah, it's really excellent. Union workers win in spite of circumstances. We've seen this with other things across the country, right? We've seen stuff happen with John Deere and Kellogg's, and there's been a number of attempts to really push down workers, and seeing those fail, that's good. That's good for all Americans, right? Again, my little tagline earlier, when inflation hits, it hits everything except for minimum wage. And the fact of the matter is people can't get by. They're going to need to rely on taxpayer resources just to keep the lights on, so to speak. They're going to be able to apply for and receive aid from the government. If they were able to be sufficient on their own, that's exactly what they want to be. You can't tell me, again, we get into like the essential worker versus the unskilled labor or whatever. You can't tell me that a job should exist and people want the service that job provides, but that the person doing that job is not worth a living wage. That's a horrible thing to say, So seeing these folks come together, I think really, it heartens me, and I think it'll spread not just through Starbucks, but hopefully touch into other industries as well. People that aren't organized are going to come together and realize, hey, I do have a voice. And if we stand together, we've got a shot at this.
Yeah, life gets a little bit better. And you're not wrong. It took at least the 10 years that or roughly 10 years I've been at the Long Island Federation of Labor, and the campaign predates me, but it took at least that long to give farm workers the right to organize in New York State. And it doesn't exist in many other states, but it thankfully now exists in New York State. And in year one, I believe, of that being the law of the land, you have Local 338 RWDSU that is in the process of working with the workers at Pindar Vineyards to negotiate a first contract. The workers there went through the election process, and Local 338 will become their exclusive bargaining agent. And so I bring that up because you raised workers want representation, and it is, as you said, in spite of the laws in this country. They haven't been rewritten for 40, 50, 60 years. It's you have a multi-million-dollar industry that is solely based on preventing workers from exercising their rights in the workplace.
Yep.
And in spite of all that, we have workers that are figuring it out, and that's no small task.
Yeah, yeah. We've got to fight. We've got to fight the concept of plutocracy, right? We can't allow corporations to have these little fiefdoms that govern how you can live your work life outside of our existing rules. I will say, we're talking on the positive side. We talk about some laws that are in place and some laws that aren't necessarily in place. But when this pandemic hit and we saw some worker shortages, and I really feel, based on the stuff that I was reading, there were some folks in the world that really figured out it's not worth my time to do these jobs. And so they wouldn't show up. They wouldn't go for interviews. They couldn't, and you see the signs. I think you can go on the internet and fairly easy find some signs where like, be kind to our workers because these are the only few that actually showed up. And, that says to me something more about the boss than it does about the workers, but that's the way I look at the world. But there are laws that are in place that do protect workers. And as soon as this pandemic turned into somewhat of a fiscal crisis, there were 2 states in the country that repealed their child workers laws in order to allow children to work till 11 o'clock at night because they couldn't find work. And, these kids in school, right? So they got to go to school. They've got to complete their homework. They've got to eat. They've got to get changed for whatever job they're going to, and then be rested and ready for school the next day. And we've got them in the workforce. Rather than changing compensation to make it so that adults could be in the workforce, they changed the laws to let kids go back to work again. And it just as soon as laws come into effect to protect workers, it's just as quickly as they can come out of effect.
I'm not familiar with that having happened. I'll obviously just take your word on it. You're a smart guy. I've done the homework, and what's sad is the fact that you are in the position of being able to say that to me on air, and everybody listening's head should spin.
Yeah.
That's absolute insanity, and it speaks to the values of certain people in this country and why working people have to insist on having a voice, because I don't know about you. No, I do know about you. That's unacceptable, right? That's just absolutely unacceptable, and it's. I'm at a loss for words.
So, I guess with all of that in mind, and just relating back to Starbucks, so we've got these unionized stores, and again, I think that's great. If there's a Starbucks by me that's unionized, I'm going to that Starbucks. I would go out of my way to go to the union Starbucks because I understand what union workers bring to the quality of work that they provide. But what do you see as reasons why the everyday person should actually be out there and supporting these unionized Starbucks?
Well, I mean, we'll go back to the minimum wage, right? The vast majority of union workers, and I'm sure it's easy enough to find exceptions, the vast majority of union workers don't earn the minimum wage, and yet every time you see a political or legislative fight about raising the minimum wage, who's putting in resources to make sure that happens? It's the union movement. Right. We are out there fighting for a worker, whether you have a union card or not, because at the end of the day, we know it's about dignity in the workplace, respect, basic human rights, quality of life, And you hear enough elected officials. This country was built on the union movement in the middle class, and we provide the pathway to the middle class. Sure. And they say that because it's true. And it's important that every working American understand we're in this for you, whether you're a card-carrying member or not. These are just beliefs that we carry each and every day. We're going to fight for you. And ultimately, we just know that the country and our communities are going to be better off for it.
And I've had discussions with people before this, they've made the comment, if we start paying fast food workers a living wage, then hamburgers are going to cost $20. No, that's not how things work at all. Not even close. They don't sell one hamburger an hour. They sell many hamburgers. And the whole idea of union representation is to ensure fair share. So when these corporations are, maybe raising prices on consumers, not moving their employees' wages, and posting record profits, we call that stuff out. We get out there, we say those things.
We've been talking about it, right? Starbucks is spending millions of dollars on a law firm to fight unionization. They recorded record profits, and now they're cutting hours for workers all of a sudden. I wonder why it is they're cutting hours.
I wonder.
I wonder. And so ultimately it is always the worker that bears the brunt of any and all economic decisions. And when we are able to come together and speak with one voice, we're able to level the playing field so that it is not the worker that's solely bearing the brunt. It is a partnership, right? It's not worker against management. If businesses go out of business, workers have nowhere to work.
Correct.
Right? And so this idea that we cost too much is not one we subscribe to because we don't want to cost too much.
Right.
Right? We want to earn a decent wage. We want to earn a good living, provide for our family, and ensure that businesses can continue to do business so that we can continue to go to work.
And again, seeing large corporations spend millions and millions of dollars to prevent unionization lets you know everything you really need to know. One, they have the money, although they say they don't. And two, they understand it's a danger to their personal profits. It's not a danger to the corporation staying open and functioning, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they have to shut their doors. It's that they have to profit share with their employees who do the actual work that make the company run.
I mean, Starbucks calls their baristas partners, right?
Yeah.
If they were really, truly partners, they would work with them to figure out a way forward to address their concerns. We just went through, and are, for some still going through, what I hope to be a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic and something we will hopefully never experience. But out of that came health and safety concerns in the workplace. Mm-hmm. And we touched on inflation. It's real. It's happening. It's something that people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Workers have concerns. Work with them to address them, and we're all better off for it.
So, one way labor kind of gives back to the world, right? Union members or not. The Mayday Music Festival, something's coming up this May 14th. It is a large format festival, live music. There'll be 3 different stages. There'll be local acts. There'll be national acts. All of that stuff is great. What normal festivals might charge $200 for, we're charging $50 or less. And it really is about spending a day together with folks from organized labor and folks from just general workers from everywhere, enjoying a sense of community together, just a sense of belonging and camaraderie. I mean, every once in a while I'll see a little clip and someone will say, folks around here or whatever, and it's like, wait, that's your community, right? When you're sitting in a restaurant, those people sitting around, that's your community, right? We can't fall for the we're all different line. This is our community. This is what we're about. And I think the Mayday Festival is an awesome way to bring everybody together, see firsthand what the ideals of labor are about in practice. No preaching, this is a music show. There's nobody giving speeches from stages or anything else. This is come hang out, bring your family, get some food, interact with folks, have a great day, and that's all it is. But I think it's a great way to highlight what it is labor can put together and what looks different about the labor community versus, maybe the for-profit community. And I want to thank you, early on, Long Island Federation of Labor was on board and supporting this back in our initial 2019 show, and again, to have your partnership this year. But I wonder if you could share a couple of thoughts on what you think about Mayday and what it means for the labor movement.
It's awesome. All right, it's absolutely awesome. You guys put together a great show. We were glad to be a part of it in 2019. We're glad to be a part of it in 2022. Real quick thought is simply people are itching to be back out and about, right? To spend time with their neighbors, to spend time with their friends, to be able to come together for a music festival, hear some good tunes. And I would stress, and maybe people don't care about this, but our whole existence is trying to make sure they do. Everybody putting on the show here, they're going to be earning a living wage. They're for the vast majority,
yes,
when available, where available, card-carrying members. This is a union-presented, union-made event that ultimately we're reinvesting in our community. We're employing people, as you said. We're not preaching, we're practicing.
Yes,
and it's really just a pleasure to be a part of it.
I appreciate the faith and the support. Just for people to know, admission for union members is $35. General admission is $49.99. It's 10 hours of live music. Some of the bands that'll be there: Spin Doctors, Deer Tick, Crash Test Dummies, Smithereens, and Marshall Crenshaw, and others. It's 10 hours of music and food and hanging out and having a good time. If you'd like to learn more, go to MaydayMusicFestival.com. Ryan, again, I want to reiterate my congratulations to you in your position as the executive director of Long Island Feds, and thank you for carving out some time and joining me to talk about this stuff today.
It was an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to doing it again sometime.
Awesome. And to our listeners, we'll speak to you next week.